It's good to have you here. The weather's nice, and we're all inside. But at least we found a way. The Blue Ridge Discovery Center was very resourceful in finding a way to do the Naturalist Rally. So 2020 wasn't one without a rally, wasn't a year without a rally. So normally if I do a workshop or a session at the rally outside, of course we go out and we draw something. I usually scout out something that's interesting. I want to have you do something that I find interesting and shows you something about drawing. I have a short bit of time with you, so I want to share certain drawing techniques that will help you draw. I mean, the most important thing is that you enjoy being outside and you record your observations, not that you make a finished artwork that's that you're going to hang on the wall. But we all like to take pride in what we do. So let's just say we want to enhance our drawing skills and we want to be able to draw a little bit faster and well. So I'm going to take you through a few ideas about drawing, about sketchbooks that I have found useful over the many years I've kept them. And I have honed down my own process in order to teach classes like this, because I didn't set out knowing these things. And when I started teaching, I had to look back and say, oh, what do I do? So I'm going to put up my slideshow now and see if it works. We're all new to this medium of a Zoom webinars, keeping a sketchbook. Okay, let's see. Share, and hopefully it'll open on the first page. Okay, and I can get on. Okay, I'm calling this collecting observations because it's always called nature journaling or nature sketchbooks, but I like to think of it as a kind of form of collecting observations, daily things we observe and record, because it helps us make those observations more significant in our busy lives. So why keep a sketchbook when we could take a photograph and walk on and save some time? Well, it gives us pleasure to really look closely and have that firsthand engagement with the natural world. Really sit there for a while. I don't know if you've ever been out drawing or doing anything, but if you go out, let's say you're fishing, you go out and you're out there to catch a fish, but meanwhile you see a bird fly by that intrigues you, you see a pattern on the leaf, an interesting way the water is rippling, a mayfly larva. I mean, you see all sorts of things when you're outside. So in a way, again, the finished product isn't as important as just spending time outside and recording your personal observations. Now, you're also practicing drawing. Every time you pick up your sketchbook, you are practicing whether you know it or not. And then for this group, this is a particularly important focus of the sketchbook. You are merging science with your own perceptions. And I think that's extremely important. I think when we only receive science, only receive information, and don't think about it and don't apply it to what we see in our daily lives, it becomes something abstract. So you're making science real to you. When you see that salamander, it's not just, oh, something that some salamander expert would know about. It's something that you are experiencing, whether you know the name of it or not. You can still notice its keeled tail. You can still notice certain patterning on its side. And then, you know, it becomes much more interactive. And you can also experiment in your sketchbook with different materials, techniques, and that, you know, concern goes without creating a finished artwork, as I said. I like to think of art as a way of knowing. Science is a way of knowing, but art is also a way of knowing. It embraces individual interpretation and mystery, and that appeals to some people more than other people. So when we teach science and we exclude art, I mean, that's excluding certain kinds of sensibilities. And that's why combining nature study and art plays an important role in a classroom, no matter if it's elementary school, college, or a nature center. Now, as I go through different ways of drawing, there's not a single right way to draw, and there's no single way to record your observations. You could draw only ants, you could draw only trees, you could draw a variety of things. You could draw people sitting at a bus stop, you know, you see a cockroach go by and you think, oh, this is an interaction. This is a inquiline here. There's no right way of doing it. It's you, what intrigues you, and I encourage you to keep going if you are interested in this as it's a kind of a way of life to keep a sketchbook, really. Keep going with it. You won't be as good as you want to be right away if you're just beginning. And if you're already a proficient draftsman, you'll have to find your own way of keeping it as a daily or semi-daily occurrence. And part of that is what sketchbook you choose. Now, when I first started this, I had sketchbooks that were like 9 by 12 or 11 by 14, and they were also bulky just to carry with me. I suggest a small one. Mine is 8.5 by 5.5. It's this one in the middle. I don't know if you can see me. I actually had another one that looked like this, which I kind of liked better because it was real casual. It had just a paperback cover, and then they stopped making them, which was a real bummer for me because, you know, I was addicted to them. The first half of my sketchbooks are these. This is number 25. So I think that's the last one, or maybe 30, I don't remember. But so I got this black bound one, which at first I really disliked because it seemed to be more formal, but I quickly got over it. You know, like, oh, I had to do something in a certain kind of way. No, you have to be really casual with your drawing, your recording, and not be worried about whether it's good enough or anything like that. So forget the binding and just do it. And part of it is that it lay flat. That's the important thing. So when you're doing a drawing, it has to be like this. If you get one of those hardbound books that are kind of, they don't open flat, it becomes very difficult. I also use one, I don't know if you can see this, but it's got an off-white paper. And when you're outside, that helps a lot. I frankly have gotten to like the look of it as well with the way I draw. But when you're outside, the glare of the sun on a white piece of paper can sometimes be blinding. And look at what page I opened up to, coronavirus picture. That's ironic, isn't it? I mean, see, I draw everything. So, what do you use? You know, I use everything. I started with pencil, and then I found that the pencil, when the sketchbook is moved, and you know, this one, the nice thing about it is that it's the size that I can stick in a purse and a bag very, very easily, unlike those bigger ones. So they do, though, shift slightly, and the pencil would smear, and you know, again, it's not the finished product, but we naturally take pride in what we do. So I'd have to spray them, which I don't like particularly. So I got into using ink, which I was clumsy at first, because ink you don't erase, right? So it took me a while to get it down. I started using felt pens in the early 90s. Rapidographs were too hard to keep their ink flowing. And then finally, Micron Pigma pens came out, and they are wonderful. They're permanent ink, and they come in different nibs. I like a very fine nib. And you will find your own media, sketchbook, size, paper, everything as you go along. You won't find it right away. But I do recommend, once you find something that you like, to keep that same size, to keep it, and not switch around, or at least number them, especially if you use a lot of different kinds and you're looking for a drawing like, well, what did I do? I want to do a painting with that insect or that flower. What sketchbook was that in? And if you have them numbered and you kind of have the sense of the year, it gives us a kind of pleasure to be able to go back and use observations. So the other things I use are watercolor, and I consider coffee a watercolor because it is colored water and it's very permanent. Watercolor, acrylic, and mixed media. And I'm going to show you some examples of that as we go along. Now this is ink. And you see, I make notes about the day, 8 a.m. Sunday, and I drew this originally with a very light pencil line, and I will show you how I do that in the demonstration. Again, this is a Micron Pigma pen, and this particular paper, I mean, if you put your hand on it, you really wouldn't feel any bumps, but there's a slight bit of surface texture. It's not totally slick. So in places, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in places like in here, you can drag your pen over the surface and it creates a lighter line. So, and I'll tell you up front, I'll confess that this beetle was dark at one time, and I didn't feel that wing showed enough. So I painted the beetle lighter color. Notice also that the page is sort of designed, but not overly designed. I encourage you to let yourself place things compositionally in ways that please you. But if you're recording your observations, to not think of too many decorative flourishes, because it kind of keeps you into that, it keeps you away from what you're thinking about in drawing. But anything that gives you pleasure in your book is a good thing. So I just thought I'd throw this drawing in because I didn't want to seem like too serious. But I looked at all these nuts that the squirrel had gnawed the nut meat out of the walnuts, and they looked like faces, and I thought that was kind of funny. And I said, I'm reminded of Darwin's illustrations in the expression of emotions in man and animals. That illustration in the book. Now this is pencil, and yes, I just did this last year, and this is I still use pencil in my sketchbook, and I do spray it with a Krylon fixative just so it stays unsmeared. But this one was happening so fast that I kept to the sketchbook. The turtle coming out, I thought he was coming out of hibernation, and that's what I wrote. But now, you know, he was all kind of crusty, but I think he'd probably already dug his way out of the leaf matter, and maybe just was still very, very slow. But here I was, you know, I'm experiencing something, and I'm spending the time watching it. And meanwhile, I see an indigo bunting singing, or, you know, that kind of thing is part of the experience. So I'm into how I use color, and anytime I use color, other than the coffee, which I'll get to, you can tell that I brought whatever it was back to a studio, either this studio where I'm sitting now, or somewhere where a cabin where I'm staying, a table that's the movable studio. So here I'm just fascinated by the colors of this decaying mushroom. So I analyze it for no other reason, just because then it gives me pleasure. And it's so fascinating to see what colors make up those very subtle greens and salmons. And this is the coffee in here on the turtle shell. So I did the drawing outside with coffee and ink, but inside, I just know this, I don't remember it. I did that red eye because I know it's acrylic. I couldn't get that that red, that bright and opaque without acrylic. So I mix media a lot, as you can see. And mixed media is not only interesting to look at and do, but it also serves a purpose. For instance, the cicada I'm watching, that's 1:03 in the morning. So if you find a cicada, one of these nymphs crawling around at 10 o'clock at night, and you put it on something vertical, like a screen door, that's what I'm looking at it here. It's looking for a tree trunk. You can watch them emerge. This is actually the experience, though I did this particular drawing only a couple of years ago. This is the experience that really got me interested in insects, because I saw this in Illinois when I was living in Illinois in the 80s, and I thought, what in the world is happening? Because the cicada comes out and it's this beautiful green. And I sketched it then. I still have those sketches in an early sketchbook. And so using the coffee for the nymph shell, it's leaving, it's this, it shows the difference between it. It makes a distinguishing form to the cicada that's coming out in ink. Then I use watercolor. I have a very limited range of watercolors, and I don't use a watercolor paper because that would be really thick, and I don't need it all the time that thick. So all I do is carefully spray the back of it with water, just spritz it, and cool iron, and it stays pretty flat, and it keeps flat. So I find that easier than to use a watercolor pad. I also like this Daniel Smith watercolor that has these little, any of the lunar colors have this little granular mineral look. And I find that painting images of animals and nature with this kind of technique has a kind of spirit of the natural world and the mysteries, rather than being too exacting, which I'm inclined to do. So it opens me up to new kinds of possibilities, not only in terms of art making, but also thinking. And I think that's one of the greatest benefits of keeping a sketchbook. It's like you're having a dialogue with nature and a dialogue with yourself. And I experiment with materials a lot, and sometimes I'm putting this coffee and a little of the lunar black I see there now around the toads. And if I showed this in a gallery, and this is in my sketchbook, so I don't, but if I showed a picture like this, what I would be implying is that we don't know everything about toads. I'm observing the toad and I'm noticing all these things about it, but there's so much mystery still. And okay, we might be able to write volumes about toad life, but how does a toad experience life? That we don't know. And I love that golden eye is just the only real detail of the piece. Now, why did I have to do this in my sketchbook? Again, it just you and I you find pleasure in just doing something for the intense experience of it. There's that same one with the lunar black. I love drawing with under a microscope. To me, it's like meditation. The art historian Gombrich said that to fix an idea in one's mind and look at it from all sides without letting go of it is meditation. So if this is what meditation is, then drawing is as close to meditation as I get. And there's nothing I like more than to be looking at some pond life under a microscope and just thinking about it for hours. Then I use mixed media made with the natural materials I'm looking at, sometimes dirt, sometimes pokeberry, which fades, but that's fine in the sketchbook. It's just interesting to see how long it will fade. And then this one, I took some of the puffball spores and put them in a little water and painted the puffballs with the spores, with watercolor made out of the spores. And this one I had to put in because I thought, you know, don't be too prissy. And this is this is a picture of butterflies sipping on dog poop. Why did I put this in? Again, two reasons. One is, hey, anything can be fascinating. And I was looking at it and thinking, wow, why did they do that? So I did go back and figure out that they get nutrients from it. But it wasn't real pleasant to stand over it. So I started to draw it in pencil and then took a picture of it and brought it back. And for obvious reasons, it was more pleasant to draw in a studio from the picture, which I loaded onto my computer. So there was a question in the last workshop I did, do you ever use photographs? In that sense, I do. I use them when something is not pleasant to be around too long. And this I ended up making a full-blown painting. And when something is moving and quickly gone, or I'm moving, I'm, you know, on the road and I see something at a rest stop and think, wow, I'd love to draw that, you know, that kind of thing. And then just sometimes when you just can't keep up with everything you want to draw, you record it with photographs or you record the color. So now I'm into using acrylic. That was acrylic and this is acrylic in my sketchbook, which I don't do very much, but when I do it, you can tell I'm in the studio. So the process, my process starts always the same. And if you had looked at any drawing book, you'd find that you're going to find the same thing, doing a quick gesture. I mean, it's just part of drawing. It's just the technique. You draw a quick gesture to get the whole form down on the page. You don't start with one detail and then go to another and go to another, and you get the whole thing down. And then when it seems to be sort of correct, I put that correct in quotations, because what's correct? Correct is what is starting to look right to you. You see, you're looking at the bee. I'm looking at the bee in this drawing. I'm looking at the drawing page. I'm looking more at the bee at first, and then see the drawing and see, yes, that's in the right place. I've got this because it's in this. The abdomen would have been bigger, but the bee is coming forward, so the thorax and the head. The thorax actually looks bigger in this drawing. You see the basic geometry, like here's just, you know, you put 3 ovals down, this oval, that oval, and the head. That's how you begin, very light lines. I hope you can see it. It's hard to photograph show people light lines without making them darker, just to be able to be read on the computer. So, and
Suzanne, you have one question. Nancy Kish wants to know what your coffee mix is when you use your coffee.
Oh, okay. So the coffee is basically my husband's coffee that he doesn't drink, or if I want it stronger, I add some instant. Does that answer the question?
Sure. Sounds
yeah.
Answers for me. Sure. Thank you.
So you let your line breathe. You don't get hard outlines, you know, making everything even line. And you look at the negative shapes, and I'll go into negative shapes more in a minute. So these kinds of shapes between the wings, between the legs, I sometimes imagine a square around it because I see those shapes better, but I don't draw the square. I just drew this for the workshop. So when you've established the subject on the page, then you add details, shading, or darker lines. Details can be part of the subject, like the head or the tip of the leaf, just part of it. I mean, never feel like, oh, if I'm drawing this moth, I have to draw the whole thing. No, you don't ever need to fill the whole thing in. In fact, I love drawings that don't have the whole thing filled in it. It just has this wonderful way of suggesting mystery and relating to the habitat of the page. Shading can indicate both the volume and texture. When I get the bar, does that mean somebody asked a question? Lisa?
They did, yes, somebody did just ask a question.
Oh, okay, so that's why the menu comes down.
Yes.
Okay. What's the question? Can I read I can't see the question.
Oh, you can't, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I can, there might be this, let me see if I can do this. If I, can you see the questions now? Is there a little tab that says Q&A that you can click?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
There. So if you open that and you can shift it to
Oh,
the
well,
top.
we have access to the slides. What do you mean?
I don't know. I don't see that question.
Well, let me say, oops.
There it is. Oh, I see. Sorry.
I could save this as a PDF and you could put it on the website.
Sure. Whatever works for you. We can talk about that. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that would actually be better than having a slideshow. Here's the question.
Yep.
Yes, PDF, please, she said. Yeah, PDFs work better. I keep jumping the gun here. Okay, shading. I'm going to do more on shading. So I'm not going to talk about it right here. Let's just review the procedure. You do a quick gesture to get the whole thing down. Now, here I'm in a natural history museum. I did this. I did this workshop in several natural history museums, and I liked this demo that I did for one, so I used it as for this slideshow. But I love drawing in natural history museums. In fact, if you can see behind me, there's my rabbit from the Grant Museum in London, which is my favorite place to be when we're in London and the weather's cold. So you do your quick gesture drawing, seeing the negative shapes, and then you start to add texture. Texture, details, dots, dashes, scribbles. I would say if there's anything that's most difficult in workshops is to get people to understand that you are translating what you see. You're not doing a scientific illustration. I mean, you might be, but then that's a different subject. And I worked as a scientific illustrator in the early 1980s, and I've done that. And I've done things that look like photographs. But when I'm out in the wild and I'm looking at things, I want my drawings to look spontaneous and be quick and be fresh, and they're not to publish to show somebody, how long the hairs are on a plant or something. They're not illustrations. They're drawings, and they're sketches. And I like to be inventive with my dots, dashes, scribbles, and suggest the movement and the texture without being a slave to being literal. I shouldn't have used the word slave to being literal, but because I like things that are literal, and I like sometimes really getting into describing something very accurately. I think what I like is the balance of both. So when I do something in ink like this, I then erase the light lines that I used to establish the form on the page. Counter change. Now, if you are an experienced artist listening to this, you probably say, oh, I know all this pretty much, but maybe you didn't know this one thing, and this is worth listening to. Counter change is light over dark, dark over light, and it clarifies the image. For instance, see, these legs are lighter as they go over the dark shading of the body, and then when they go out into space, they're darker. What if they are the same color as the body of the crayfish? So if I shaded those, making them the same tone, they'd disappear. They wouldn't look like they came out in space. So this is a drawing trick or let's call it a tip, that will help you in all sorts of drawings. And where did I learn this? I did not learn this in art school from any artist. I learned this from Seurat. I looked at his drawings of trees, And I noticed that when they went over a dark background, they were lighter. And when they went over a light background, they were darker. But nobody would ever look at it and say, oh, look at, that's a two-tone tree. No, it's done, the tonal manipulation is done just for the beauty of the drawing and the clarity that this is overlapping something, okay? So when a tree starts out on the landscape, it can be light, but when it goes over the sky, it looks dark. You can actually go out in nature and see that. You can see that the trunks look lighter, and then you look up and they look darker against the light of the sky. So it's a phenomenon, but we can exaggerate. We saw the spider web before, but now I'm going to describe how I did it. So I obviously I didn't draw the webs down here. I drew the spaces in between. So it's light over dark and dark over light. You see? So this is dark over, and then I can even do this weed lighter, right? And then did all these negative shapes. What I'm really drawing are negative shapes. I don't think I can, no, never mind. Back to that. I wanted to enlarge it. I should make an enlargement. So what I did to do something like this is I drew it with very light pencil lines like this. I drew the whole web with light pencil lines, and then I went in, and you could do this with any media, ink, pencil, and I very loosely filled in only the negative spaces between the strands in the web. And then up here, I just let it go with lines, with ink lines. And then notice that this is just kind of controlled scribble. And yet there's no way I could sit there and do every leaf, even if I wanted to. So you have this kind of liveliness, which isn't descriptive as much as evocative of nature. So now talking about lines, this is a piece I want to talk about because it shows you what I can call lost and found lines. Now, this is the original sketchbook drawing, and here's a kind of analysis. Okay, lost and found line. There's this, and remember, an edge is also a line. The edge between light and dark, or two different colors, creates a line. Okay, and then there's the drawn line, the actual drawn line like that. So when you create a line that is lost here, it gets so light it practically dissolves into that paper, and then it gets darker to suggest the forms, you know, to suggest the shape of the form. It breathes. It breathes in the habitat of the page. And then this is a lost edge. So we get this kind of tonal manipulation compared to something that people want to do. They want to take a line and they want to draw around it with exactly around their subject matter with the same weight. Okay, and that's why you have to start out loose and light and start to darken slowly so that your line can be sinuous and not heavy-handed. Now, there are always people who find different uses and different ways of expression for different kinds of approaches in art. And you could go to a gallery tomorrow and say, Suzanne, I saw this artist and he or she was doing hard coloring book lines around every form. But that was a choice and a matter of expression for whatever that artist was saying in the work. But in our sketchbooks, we want to make them, first we don't want to make such hard lines that we can't correct them. And by correcting, I don't mean erasing and feeling that we did it wrong, but correcting by finding the actual form. And we're going to talk about hatching a bit. I mean, hatching being one of one type of shading. Hatching, cross-hatching, scumbling, stippling, continuous tone blending. I'm going to give you some examples that's better than that little. Oh, I have a demonstration now. Let's see if I can share it. I think, Lisa, I have opened the other video. So can you let me go out of the screen, stop share for a minute? Never mind. Please be, oops, oh darn. This is one of those moments where the technology gets over my head, and you'll have to just bear with me. I don't know how to get out of this.
I think we're all good there. If,
You see, it says continuous tone.
no, I see you.
No, I don't know how to get out of it.
So you need to, can you go across the top and maybe, are you in a full screen?
Yeah. Whoa, what's this? This is the, just a minute.
Sure. There we go. So now we see your screen. I see your video page open.
I want to show this. I want to show this. Okay, so I'm going to stop that share. I'm going to open that. Show that. Now, share screen. And, okay, see if we can do it. Can you see that?
Yep, I see.
All right,
I see
here
you.
we go. Okay, shading. Continuous tone is just basically you're rubbing your pencil on the paper and putting varying pressures on it so that it gets darker and lighter. That's what most people think of shading. The blending stump, I'm going to use a 6B, 5B pencil and put a little dark on the paper. And then I'm going to take the blending stump and do basically the same thing. It's a little wrapped piece of, here's a big one, of paper, and you can blend beautifully with it. Some people absolutely love it. I used it in scientific illustration. And then there's hatching, and hatching is, of course, what you can do with pencil, but you can also do it with, you have to do it with ink. Ink, you can't really do continuous tone in the same kind of way as smoothly. Now, cross-hatching, you want to overlap lines, but without creating a screen, like absolutely horizontal, absolutely vertical, so you can't you create a screen-like approach. Now, you want to kind of hatch over the lines at different angles, and that becomes very intuitive. See, I'm trying to make it darker at the right. And scribble, that's, you just saw that part in the spider drawing I did. Scribbling is literally scribbling. You know, you just make little marks and go back and forth, and you press your pencil down and down when you want it to be darker. Then mark making can be basically anything. I mean, mark making can be a kind of scribble, and it can also imitate what you're looking at. But it's not descriptive in any kind of photographic way. It's a translation of what you're looking at. And we'll look at some examples after this. So I'm doing little dots, I'm doing little V's, I'm doing little circles, I'm doing lines. So that's different kinds of marks. Okay, got that. Okay, so now I have to go down and I have to remove that and open up my slideshow again. Okay. You all with me?
We're with you.
Okay.
You're doing good.
Okay. It's for some reason I don't see the this. I guess it's loading. I had to close it to open that other one.
So we got Mary Ratliff has raised her hand. I'm gonna let her talk for a second.
Okay. Just
Go ahead, Mary. Oh, let me unmute you. Sorry. Okay, Mary. Well.
It was an accident.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Sorry.
No worries.
okay. So can everybody see shading demonstration video or not? No, you can't.
No, we can't. Now it's something's come. There we go.
Okay. It won't go full screen. I'm so sorry. You know, this is.
No, that's. I think that's fine.
Oh, I get it. Never mind. Oh, here, resume share. You know, see it. Okay. This is so frustrating.
Here we go. We got it.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we saw the video. Okay, so we had the continuous tone. That's a blending stump. My husband loves blending stump. It just suits what he does. And that's the other thing. I really encourage you to get some materials and experiment with different kinds of materials so that you find what works for you. And what works for you one year, like when you're beginning or right now or whatever, might be different than what will work for you in 5 years. You'll get more accustomed to different experiments and papers. And okay, so that's continuous tone. You can see that it's the pencil's basically rubbed on the surface of the paper, and you can get some very soft tones with that kind of shading method. And hatching, you go around and cross, and this is of course by Rembrandt. And I'm not myself. I learned from all different artists. I look at a drawing. I don't care what it is of or who it's by. It doesn't have to be natural history. I study it, and I in fact. When I taught myself how to keep a sketchbook 30 years ago, and I mean, I literally had to teach myself because I was forced to draw so big in art school. I studied Rembrandt drawings and Rembrandt etchings by copying them and throwing away the copies, but getting the idea of how the hatching, how the drawing was created, so that I could do it. And I learned. I guess it's sort of like the difference between listening to music and playing music. If you listen to it, you can enjoy it and you can understand it to a degree, but when you play it, you really understand it. Okay, so that's hatching, and you see how loose that is and how the lines start to cross more and more as he wants to get darker and darker on the elephant. And then, of course, Van Gogh is a master of marks. This is pen and ink. And look at all the different marks. Dots, circles, lines, dashes, longer lines, open space for rocks, you know, just amazingly inventive. So I just put a couple of mine to remind you of one thing. Marks, the marks can create both texture and shading. For instance, so this pod, or the outer shell of the Spanish chestnut, is very spiky. So here I'm drawing the spikes, but here I'm doing, the spikes are darker. And then what did I do? I put hatch lines over the spikes. So it creates that volume. Now, here's an example of when I'm creating the hatched lines, but I'm also following the contour of the nest. So they're not just arbitrary hatched lines. You can use your hatched lines or your texture to enhance the sense of what you're drawing, the shape, the volume, the texture, that type of thing. So now I think I have some questions. Right? Is that right, Lisa?
I see some people chatting, and I can, if you want to see the chat, I can read them to you.
Okay, let's do that before I start the demonstration
Okay.
video.
So you want to open up, so right now we can open it up to questions and answers?
Yeah, because right at this point, I'm going to give you all some, I'm going to do a demonstration video of drawing, and then I'm going to ask you to have a little drawing time. And then you can either chat with me or you can send me your drawings you can email me the drawings at suzanne.stryk@gmail.com, and in the subject line put rally workshop or something where I know what it's about, because if I just see a strange name and a drawing, what's that from? So put rally workshop or whatever you want to, but use the word rally, and then put a smaller file in of what you're drawing and what your question is, or if you just want a response. Okay.
There's a question. Can you see it, or I can read it to you either way?
Can I see it?
You can if you
click yeah.
Q&A.
Do you limit yourself on the amount of time you spend on each sketch? I don't limit myself like arbitrarily, but I might spend 15 minutes on a sketch and then see something the next day to look at. And I mean, it bothers me about it. I actually did this sketch here. Let's see, where is it? Oh, I had it open. I was working on it this morning, even though I did it a few weeks ago. It was of a snake. Yeah, I don't know where it is. But it was of a snake skeleton, and I didn't think I got the head right. And it always bothered me. So I just started to work on it this morning. I mean, I do that all the time. And I also find different parts of things that I've written really kind of questionable. So I will sometimes rewrite them or scratch out, just because that's who I am. I don't recommend that. But a drawing or painting can take me anywhere from 10 minutes to a few hours. Sometimes some of those ones with painting, I really get into them. I mean, I did this tadpole the other day, and I started it. I don't know if you can see that. I started it outside. I had a day of drawing from creatures that I had pulled out of a pond, and my total bliss. And so I started to actually take some of the pond water and make the tadpole shape, but it wasn't staining the paper well enough. I had drawn it. So when I came back, I started to use that Lunar Black and coffee in it, and I spent the rest of the day practically on it. I mean, I was just enjoying trying to evoke the muckiness. I've always been fascinated by creatures that have like a golden eye, but they live in this muck. It's just fascinating to me, is the beauty of it. And so that took me a long time, but it was also time that I had. Sometimes when you're in certain situations, you're traveling, so you don't have that much time. And if you want to spend more time on something, I recommend taking a photograph and then having that as reference so that you can keep working on it. I think that's the thing. I don't like just taking a photograph and working from the photograph, because then you're taking your experience away from that full feeling and sense of what's going on around you in the natural world. But at the same time, sometimes that's not possible. So a balance is probably the best way to go. So I am going to try to get to my video. Do you see anything, Lisa? Do you see my slideshow?
Not yet. I see you talking to me, or us.
Okay.
We have to share.
Okay, just 1 minute. If people need to take a 2-minute break, that would be good. Go get a pencil and a piece of paper, and do anything else. And I will get this video on the screen in the meanwhile. Let's see. I have two. I figured it out. I have two slideshows open. Are you in a position to let us see you?
That's me asking Katie a question.
Oh,
I was going to see, I noticed whenever Mary raised her hand to speak accidentally that she popped up, and I was going to see if Katie was where she could actually show her, if she had the ability to show us video, and then maybe they could actually, if they drew something, they could show it to you. But I don't know. I haven't experimented with this to see.
I cannot get out of this. I'm sorry, but I can't get out of my, here it is. There I got it. Oh, I erased the whole thing. This is, you don't want that. Okay. Okay. Do you just see me, Lisa?
Yep. So right. Yep. I'm going to chat with Katie for a second. So you go ahead and do what you need to do.
Okay. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, can you see this thing that says drawing demonstration?
Sure do.
Okay, now, I don't know if we're all here now. So I told everybody to leave, do something.
Oh,
What do you
boy.
think? I have no way of knowing if people are gone.
Yeah, they're here. Yeah, they're all.
They're here, okay.
Well, I don't
So
know
we'll
if
watch
they're here.
this and I'll narrate it, and then we'll draw for a little while. Okay, so that's my subject, a squashed mantis. I thought it was an interesting shape, and I'm looking at it. I just don't have the skills of showing you it and the drawing. And now I'm getting the whole thing established in light lines. I made those two marks, like the two lines right away. I put that oval for a head. I looked at that triangle that made the negative space in this whole triangle. I'm putting in that other leg and looking at this shape. This is a negative shape. And now notice I stop working on that part and I go down and I work on a different part of the drawing. So I keep my my attention to the whole thing rather than one little part. I'm going to put in that other leg. It's a little dark. In fact, I tried to get a little darker purposely so that the drawing would show up. But I am starting to establish the line where I think it's sort of correct or where I want it. Now I'm going to put in that leg and the other leg, keeping my line pretty light still, looking at that negative shape there. In fact, I just drew that negative shape. And I'm just drawing that negative shape and that negative shape, you see? The shape between the legs. Remember, negative shapes are like the the space between the cup and the handle, not the cup. So I'm looking at that space between, and I'm looking at the relationship of all of the parts to the whole. And now I'm making things as I see them, a little darker. Put in one of the antenna there. Put in the eye. Put in the I'm correcting the thorax region. Notice how some of the lines are getting darker now, and some of them are lighter. And they. Okay. This is actually more detail. The end of that particular mantis was kind of ragged, which interested me. See how ragged it is? Now we're going to go back to, and I'm going to shade it.
Oh, I missed
Now, watch this. Okay, I'm shading the wing, but I'm also making lines in the direction of the veins. I'm not drawing every single vein, but my husband is playing music out on the porch. I don't know if you can hear it on the video, the birds and the music. Okay, so I've shaded in. Notice the counter change, the light over dark, dark over light. I did it. So that leg shows up. This is lighter than that leg, so it goes in the back. This antenna is darker, so it goes forward. This is lighter, so it goes in the back. Now, I'm actually right now finishing. Directional marks, counter change, foreground legs are lighter, and then there's your mantis. But I over lightened it to register the light, the drawing, and now it's a little bit too light. No, I don't want to leave this meeting. Okay, what I want to do is, here's lots of questions. Okay, Suzanne is, I guess they're not questions. I guess they're just talking.
Here. No, there is a question.
Where is the question?
It's a Sarah D. It says, do you sketch in public? And if so, how do you handle people stopping to watch you? I'm so
that's
proud
great.
that it's
I have a funny story about that. Well, I used to draw in public like this. I don't know if you can see me, like, don't look, like, I'm so bad, I mean, that was in the 80s. Okay. Then I took a scientific illustration course at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. And I lived in a town west, and then we'd come in, and my teacher was a former illustrator there, and he had a sketch in the museum, and they gave us these like little camp stools to sit on, and hundreds of people would come by. I mean, literally, it was like what a total immersion. You just had to deal with it. This was a class. You had to deal with all the people who had to make comments. So we made, the class members made a t-shirt that said, glad your uncle was an artist. No, I don't get money for this. And all these things on our t-shirts, and all the questions. That people always wanted to tell us about some relative they had who was an artist. They always wanted to know how much money we made from it. And so you have to learn, first of all, not to care at all about whether they think you're good or not. You just have to get over that. That doesn't matter. And you have to also not engage with people too much. Children, yeah, I always love to talk to children, but I have to make sure that I still have my time, and I'm able to draw. So I might ask somebody something, and they might tell me something that's interesting. But you have to kind of control it a little bit, otherwise your time in public places can be very diluted with conversation. And so let people watch you, and you will eventually get used to it. And they will eventually learn to just watch and go by and not try to talk too much, because they know you're working. But I actually work all the time in museums now, or public spaces, or parks, or no problem. So I think the best advice is to go to somewhere that's very crowded and and let yourself experience it for a while and know how to deal with it rather than be worried about it. Because I was too, and when I first started sketching, using a sketchbook publicly. Okay, do we have any other questions?
I don't see any yet. I just wanted to speak to just to Katie to speak out. And I'll get to your, she can get to your question. 1 second, Leslie. But Katie, can you speak and us hear you? I was curious to see if your screen popped up if you spoke.
Sure. Can you see me?
No.
Okay.
I don't. Oh, no, I don't. That was, your screen changed, but it was Suzanne changing hers.
Well, I just wanted to say that I have always been behind a camera, and that's how I've documented my nature. But Suzanne has showed me another mode that I can use to document species and show characteristics and just features. And it's really brought a different side out of me that I didn't know I had.
Oh, thank you. That's an interesting comment. Yeah. And also, you know, as a photographer, you have to think sometimes, what would it be like if I had a roll of 12 shots in my camera? You know, with digital cameras, we now have unlimited shots. And, you know, sometimes, like when you're drawing, you can redo things, but basically you have that one shot, you have that one time. So anytime you have a sketchbook or a camera, you're going out into the wild with two things are happening. One is, in a way, you're connecting to it. You're less likely to daydream about that list on your refrigerator, things to do. You know, you're less likely to brood about some problem in your inbox. You're connected. You've got that. It's like a third eye or something. But you're also it also comes between you and nature. I'm very aware of it, and that's actually what my finished artwork is a lot about how we interpret nature. But that's what our species does, and it does it well. And so we're always interpreting. Those are interesting ideas. Who was that who said that? I didn't.
It was Katie Cordell.
Oh, Katie. Yeah, interesting.
And Leslie, I opened you up to be able to speak. If you would like to ask Suzanne your question verbally, you would have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I'm in a women's art group, and our art group leader just sent us an email today about Nicholson's peerless.
Oh, wait, wait, hold on. I just accidentally, okay, you're back in, sorry. You hit a wrong button. Leslie?
Okay, now.
Yeah, Nicholson's.
Yeah, watercolors. And so I looked at the website, and it's overwhelming. There's so many colors. And I just wondered if you have some advice. I think you said that, you know, you kind of limit the range of colors when you're doing nature art.
Yeah.
What colors do you like for your work?
Well, I use the coffee a lot. And if I use it in my sketchbook, I do not spray them with a UV spray. But if I use them for a finished artwork, I spray that only just to be responsible. I've had a piece hanging in my dining room for 15 years with coffee, and it hasn't faded. So I use coffee a lot, and I use the Daniel Smith lunar colors and some of their other earth colors. And then I have other watercolors that were given to me, actually. So I have other primary colors, but I use a range of earth tones.
Okay.
Let me just go, and since it's right here, I want to show you all something. Okay, can I make myself big?
Yeah, you'll have to unshare your screen.
Oh, stop share.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I take this Zoom webinar chat? Can I
just hit the little red dot and exit.
Oh, there's no red dot. I'll leave it. I keep thinking there's a question. So these are some of the colors I like. I make little swatches of them, and see, you notice they're all pretty much earth tones. I got a lunar blue. I think, are you seeing that
Yeah.
like a mirror?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is called Lunar Blue, and it's got that granular effect. And these are all the colors I use, and I just make these swatches to see. When I first got it, Lunar Blue, I just added to my colors, so it's up there, isolated. But so I use mostly earth colors, and then occasionally, like if I need a bright color, I take one of the many watercolor sets that people have given me. My mother gives me things that she finds at a senior center. So I mean, I have them, but I don't use them very much. I primarily use the coffee and lunar black too, because if I'm traveling or I'm out in the wild, could be a parking lot, it could be anywhere, and that leads me to another interesting to me point. But it's easier to travel with a limited set of colors for me. But speaking of parking lots and out in the wild, for a visual artist, the other thing to note is that, and photographer for sure, you can notice things anywhere. I mean, you can be in a wilderness area and see things, or you can be behind Kroger and see something fascinating. I mean, that it kind of opens the world up to you. In fact, I am really interested in inquilines and creatures that live in our spaces. I think right back there, you probably can't see it, but I have a painting I did of a house spider that lives under the table. Okay. I mean, what's the difference? There's nothing more fascinating. I mean, that creature has its way. In fact, it's very tiny. I did it bigger. So that's, by the way, that's coffee and black gesso. You have to take my painting class to learn how to use black gesso. So I love how art kind of opens you up to wonder in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of places. I find that if I'm outside, I'm never bored. Everything is alive. It's me. It's not the place that is limited. If I'm bored. So
Thank you.
do we all want to draw a little bit? And I've only done this twice before, and I've done it with a meeting, so I see you all, and I see you can hold things up. So we could have a drawing session, or you could turn this into a PDF and you could send me your drawings. Any response? I have a small section of the slideshow left about writing in your sketchbooks.
So we have,
Lisa, what is the, is there any consensus?
We have some people that are saying they would love to draw. And then we have 2 more questions that I can either open up that you can speak directly to, or I can read them to you, whichever way you want to do that.
Okay, so we'll draw, and if you have to leave for some reason, the PDF will show you what I said about the writing. So first, let's answer the questions. All right, you want to read them to me?
Yeah,
Lisa?
so I hear Nora Cox. Let me unmute you, Nora. Nora? Nora, are you there? You may need to unmute yourself. Okay, Nora says, as you spoke, I drew my orange stripy cat. It was interesting not knowing which way the stripes go. Drawing really makes you look and think about details. Had to count the stripes on his tail.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's cute. And then we have, so that's it. So and then Joan Clark, how can you get the information on your classes? So I did type in your website to them, and I did type in your email in the chat box.
Oh, I don't teach that many classes. When I say classes, I don't teach that. I don't teach any at any particular institution. I do teach a class up near Stanton called the Farm Class every year, but that's very limited in terms of enrollment, so I can't really recommend it. It's usually full by January. And it happens in May. In fact, I'm doing that online this year, and that's a painting and writing workshop, a full week. I think it would be nice to have a weekend of painting or drawing, or this when you draw and you have a weekend together. And I find that I can teach people. But other students are also sharing their techniques, and that really helps people. So, you know what I will do if I'm teaching on the sidebar of the website under news, you'll see it would be on the left. I'll put something up there like an open workshop that one could go to wherever it is, because who knows where all of you are.
Right. So Suzanne, in the chat, it looks like several people have asked that would love to hear about writing in journal. That was several comments.
Would you like to do that first and then draw?
You guys can just answer in the chat. I have one yes.
While we're waiting, I want to wish Morgan a very happy birthday. I hear Morgan is 10 years old today. Happy birthday.
Good. I have a bunch of yeses.
Okay, so we'll go back to the slideshow, right?
Okay.
And we'll just talk about that, and then we'll draw, and then we can stop whenever we want to.
Okay.
That's probably a good idea.
All right.
Okay. Keeping a sketchbook. Okay, I'm waiting until that. Oh, wait, there it is. Everybody see that? Writing in your sketchbook?
We see demonstration video, pencil, optional pen and ink, and drawing session. That's the one we see.
And
I'm going to assume everybody sees what I see.
you see that, right?
It says demonstration video.
Yeah, okay, so that's
And now it's full screen. It starts with a green praying mantis.
writing in your sketchbook?
Yep.
Okay, so you've seen a lot of my pages now, and you see a lot of writing. And I can't tell you what's right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. You just have to listen to your own voice. And why I say that, like, well, why wouldn't I? Well, because people, as soon as they start to write, they sometimes can think that they have to write certain things. I like to think of, there's certain people, like I'm sure you all have certain email voices, like you can write absolutely honestly to certain people. And other people, you have to kind of watch what you say, or, turn off the humor, or turn on the, pretend like you're writing to that person that you can say anything. It's almost like you are writing to yourself in a way in a journal, but you want to get that natural tone. And what I'm going to say are just suggestions. They're not like this category, this category, this category. When I first taught this about 15 years ago, I thought, well, what do I do? And I just looked at what I did, and I separated it into categories. It's usually a mixture of all of them, but it'll give you some ideas, maybe stimulate a few things that you wouldn't have thought of before. I don't know why I said basic and then put this picture. That's not really very basic. So I have to do this slideshow again. But this is, I put the date. And so there should be really one that just says the date, time, and place. And maybe like it's hot or something like that. But this one is really all sorts of observations of every little detail of something. I mean, that is my pleasure too. I'm not to have a bird that hit the window, but to really look at it and to really kind of honor it by appreciating its beauty and its fantastic form. In fact, I always knew that woodpeckers have two toes that go forward and 2 toes that go backwards, but I'd never actually held one and drawn it. So it, again, to go back to our very first, my very first comments, you learn things when you connect with nature more than you would if you weren't drawing, So this is, I'm relating the whole experience. Okay, up here, July 15th, it's 90 degrees, 88% humidity at 2:30 p.m. So why is it necessary to put that? It's really not. It just gives me pleasure, I guess. And there's some of me that is just part of that scientific illustrator who has to record everything. So I write, last night squawking robins, catbirds, and the hoarse barking note of brown thrashers alerted me there was a predator in the tree tangle of vines near the fence under pines. Sure enough, a black rat snake slithered in the branches. Today, I spot the serpent again, this time resting on a limb. So that gives you an experience. This one we saw at the very beginning. And here, I don't know what kind of spider I'm drawing. So when I go home, and I think that this was like a total illustration at this point. Back at home, I look up, and I looked up the spider and the Latin name, and discovered it was named by Charles Darwin. And it means, the Latin names means with a bright gleam, charming or elegant. And I was just thrilled by looking it up and finding out even more. And that's actually how I learned so much. I mean, you can read books, you can take classes, but you will never learn as much, I believe, than interacting with something in the natural world, jotting it down, asking yourself the question, even on the page, what is this? Or, find out if this bat does this, or whatever it is. And then going home and immediately that day, looking it up. And, with the internet now, there's hardly anything you can't find. So then I call these interpretive journal notes. It's kind of a very personal, maybe emotional, philosophical response to what I'm drawing. And it reflects how you think about the world. This could never be taught. I'll read this one. So it's July 3rd, 9 a.m. I'm walking around the yard and come across this catbird fledgling. Catbird because of its gray feathers and characteristic reddish-brown spot under its tail. The head feathers are plastered down by slug slime, and flies are beginning to enter into the ear hole, easy access for their reproductive need to enter flesh. And yet, despite the everyday tragedy of a fledgling lost, how lively the big feet make the little bird, ready to run into the next world without having been in the first very long. The other thing I do in my sketchbooks is I write notes for future of all sorts, like future artwork for me, but maybe even writing. And it's in the back of my sketchbook. Okay, so here's the back of my sketchbook. There's a little pouch, and I go from back to front with notes. This is my current sketchbook. And then from front to back with drawings. Why do I do that? Because I used to put notes for like an exhibit idea or a finished artwork in the pages, and I never find them again. I just never remember where they were. So when I go back to forward with those, I go, oh, I know I wrote that in the back of that. And in this one, you can see that little table with notes. It's actually a drawing of an installation at a museum. And I thought, oh, that might work for my notes on the state of Virginia. I didn't actually do that, but I jot that down. So that's another idea. Or you can write nothing at all, which I thought I had to add because I don't always write something. And just before we, I think this is the last one. Yeah. Just before I end with the slideshow, I just want to review a few things. Look at the counter change here. Light against dark, dark. I mean, to me, that was a real find for that. I use it all the time. And also the hatching, there's hatching, but it's also describing the roundness of the form. The mark making, I haven't counted every single line. If I were doing a scientific illustration, I'd probably have to put the exact look of those forewings, but I'm indicating their direction, okay? Direction, spots also going in the direction. Just to end our conversation with drawing and not writing, some of you will want to write, some of you will not want to write in your sketchbooks, or just do that one thing. Ask yourself a question. What is it I'm looking at? Or maybe I want to draw this more, and some kind of a plan. I think that keeps us kind of connected to our sketchbook rather than sketch and then leave it and then sketch and then leave it. It becomes kind of interactive with our day, and that's, I think, what our goal is. And then as we go back to look at sketches, it becomes like a story. It becomes like part of our history. So I think we're ready to do a little drawing, and those of you who have to leave can leave. And in terms of not being able to see what you're drawing, which is different, because even if even if it's not very clear when you hold it up, at least I can see a little bit. You can email me the drawing again, suzanne.stryk@gmail.com. Put rally in the subject line in some form and send me a small file, so it's not not tiny, but just an email type file, and I'll give you some kind of reaction. I mean, even just to say, just if you want to share. I don't want to critique drawings, but I might be able to see some tip or share something with you. Okay, so Lisa, should we do the sketch now, or is everybody ready for that?
Sure, we can ask. I have one person said they need to leave, and we can see right now we still have 37 people. And we can see, I know that Amy Renfriends was one who mentioned that she wanted to draw, and Nora Cox also wanted to draw. I was wondering if I made somebody, if I upped them to being a panelist, that they could actually, video might come on and then they could actually show you a picture. I just don't know because I haven't tried this before. So it's something that we could attempt. If anybody could raise their hand and let me know that they would like to draw, and that would be a good, so let's do a hand count of hand raises. So if you would like to draw and participate, then let's have some hand raises and we'll see how many people we have. Oh, wow. A fair amount.
And they want to be seen?
I can try it and see. I don't know if they can be seen, but we have 11 hand raises so far. So I think that out of the people here, we have 11 that want to participate.
That would help. I mean, the thing about life is it happens.
Okay, so
and in a couple hours, a couple days, you'll think, oh, I can't get back to showing Suzanne something. If they could show me now, that would be cool.
Okay, so
while they're doing it too, like, is this what you were talking about, or something like that?
Right. So Leslie,
can I say one thing while you're fooling with the technology? This would be a great time to say something. I have that mantis, and I chose it. You saw that green mantis that keeps popping up on the screen. I chose it because you can do certain things with it. Its legs overlap, and there's direction, and it's clear. And it just works well for this format. But if there's something else in your room there or your house that you'd rather draw, go get it. That's fine. I have nothing about this mantis. I think it just, let me show you. Let me see. Oh, no.
Yeah, while you bring up your mantis. Okay, Leslie.
Okay, that wasn't the mantis, so I'm gonna go back.
Leslie.
Yes.
Okay. Are you where you would like to be viewed?
Not necessarily.
Okay, no problem. Then I'll ask somebody. I just wanted to check something, and I'm just pulling up viewer. This the one there where I had your hand up. So I'm just going to go down and see. In the chat, can somebody reach out to me and let me know, out of the people who want to draw, if you are interested in being seen? Okay, Katie's up. So Katie, I'm going to come to you. All right. So Katie, I'm going to allow you to talk. And then I have to, Katie, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to promote you to a panelist, and I'm going to see if that lets us see you.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So you may, or I may have to let somebody see you.
Okay, well, while you're working that out, Lisa, also I wanted to tell you that if you have a piece of scratch paper, I want you to start out really scribbling, so you don't need a good piece of paper to do that. I'm going to kind of warm you up, and so if you want to go get that piece of scratch paper. I never throw paper away. I always have tons of paper that has typing on it.
Let's see. Let me fix.
I'm a big reuse. We don't have recycling anymore, basically. So I'm a big reuse person.
So let me see.
There we go.
Is it working?
I think I see you're now in a panelist. So I'm going to click a button that says ask to start video. And I see Katie. There we go. So Katie, could you just stick something up in front of your screen and see if Suzanne can see it?
This is my trial already. I tried.
Oh, wow. Great. Oh, hi, Katie.
Hello.
Okay, so are we going to have everybody like that?
We could. Anybody who wants to.
Okay.
If that makes you comfortable, sure. Or anybody else who wants to. We can't see Katie. So that is because I have the spotlight on.
Oh.
Okay, now.
How about this, Lisa? How about getting people started and then have them raise their hand or chat with you and tell you, I want to be seen. I want to show Suzanne something.
That'll be good. We can do
Okay, so we can get started now. How do I do the speaker view and then share screen and then share? Or no, but yeah, okay. Everybody see our mantis? Lisa?
Yes.
Can you see it?
I can.
Okay. All right. Now, now I have to stop share for a minute. I want to be seen. So can you put me on?
I can spotlight you.
Spotlight me.
Yep.
Okay. So this is how we're going to start out. We're going to take a piece of scratch paper. This is my good paper. And okay, so we want to just start scribbling. We want to make circles, overlapping circles. Just start to scribble. Do a little bit of darkening scribble. Put a few lozenge shapes together. Okay, everybody get something that they're working on with a pencil and a piece of paper and just start to scribble and make some little lines, make some big lines scribbling, put a little circle on top of it. It's like if you've ever taken a dance class or been an athlete, you know how you warm up, you move your shoulders, you move your neck before you start any kind of hard move. So what we're doing is we're getting our line loosened up. And do I do this? No, but I automatically start sketching loosely. So I want you to automatically start sketching loosely. And so we're going to just keep doing it. Keep filling the page, and then maybe do a few little hatches, like we were talking about, hatch lines over that. I'm trying to see. Oh, there I can see.
Yeah, so it's showing a glare from the light that's on your.
Yeah. Here's, I want to do it like this. Okay. Okay, so what you're going to do, I'm going to draw on, please bear with me. This is not my normal. So you might want to do some scribbles like this, and then add a head, you know, you pretend like you're drawing something, but you're not really, right? Very light. This is obviously very dark. Think about little marks you can make that start to, when added up, they start to get darker, right? Hatching, just look very loose. You're not even describing anything. This one of the nice things, you're not looking at anything anymore, I mean, yet. So you can just be real loose with your line like that, okay? Maybe another circle, and then a little circle on top. And you're moving your arm, and you're looking at the paper, and you're just getting all loosened up in order to start drawing in a way that's looser. Now you can start, now in some little place where your paper isn't filled up, I can't do this because this is just like all or nothing. Start very, very light, and get darker and darker and darker and darker as you go, okay? After you've done that, do something where you're starting very light, keep it light, and then get darker on one side, okay? The whole idea is to keep it, keep your line moving. Okay, oh, look at that, wow. I like that, okay. I was got, oh, let's see, stop share, okay. So everybody's done that now, and we're gonna start our mantis. And remember, now I'm not looking at it, so I'm going to start very, very light, getting the forms established. Very light, and I'm going to keep moving all over, all around the paper. I'm not going to finish one part until I get everything lightly established, and it's going to look almost like a cloud or something. I mean, you start looking at drawings now after this. Maybe you already have. Some of you are, you know, well acquainted with drawing, and you've seen Da Vinci working with lots of lines that are around a drawing. Well, those are his lines that he's begun the drawing with, and then started to define more and more and more. And that creates a kind of energy. I mean, it's not inexactness. It's an energy, and it's a beauty of almost discovering the form. It's almost like you see it coming out of the paper, and then you start to darken when you see that form in the right place. So let's put our mantis on now and start. And I want you to get the whole form established in 2 minutes. I'm going to say 2 minutes, but I'm going to actually give you 3 minutes. I want you to have everything on the page in light lines in 2 minutes. Okay, go. Keep the line light and keep it going all around the page. Don't work on any detail first. No detail, just shape. Keep it, if it's scribbly, it's scribbly. That's called a gesture drawing. And you want to get that. I don't know if you can, Lisa, can they see my cursor?
I can. I'm assuming they can.
Yes.
Okay. So remember, look at negative shapes. Look at that triangle. That is a shape. That is a shape. You have to, if you can see that, then you can see where that leg is. that is a shape. Those are as much about drawing as drawing the leg itself, as drawing the subject itself, seeing those shapes. Now you're going to keep this leg. I'm going to just chatter. I'm sorry, but
No,
you
no,
know, we
I
only
was
have
gonna
this.
say that's
We only have this one time together, so
I'm probably the least artist person out of all this group, and if you had not pointed that out, it'd be something that I probably wouldn't see. But now that you say that there's shape there, I'm like, wow, they're really
yeah.
shape there.
That, I mean, if you just drew all these, if you put a square around this mantis and you drew all the negative shapes, the mantis would appear. You know, if you drew this and then you drew this and then you drew this, in fact, that would be an excellent exercise. So it's seeing when you're drawing is different than when you're just seeing, like, so you don't bump into a chair or something when you're walking. You know, seeing is intense. And then also the ability to translate detail into the drawing is a challenge as well. And it's so fun. It's actually fun, but it's not fun. Nothing is as much fun as when you feel like you have to do something right. It's, you know, again, don't feel any onus about doing anything right. There's no right or wrong. And it's amazing how much people improve when they just work on it a little bit and start looking at drawings. And remember what I said about copying other artists. I mean, you see a drawing and you think, I'd like to be able to draw like that. And you just copy his or her drawing. I mean, you just do it. You just look at it and you say, you just don't know how it's made until you copy it. And then you throw it away. It's not like you're doing it to show as your own. It's a way of learning. I mean, go back to our friend Surratt. That's what he said. He learned from the artists in the Louvre. He didn't learn as much from his teachers. He learned by copying artists in the Louvre, and he listed some. I can't remember which ones, Delacroix probably, and others. So that's the artistic process. Now, how does this deal with nature? Well, we're talking about observing and recording our observations. So if we can get our drawing down onto the page with some rapidity, we're going to enjoy it more. And we're going to enjoy the whole process of drawing, adding notes, going back to the cabin or the house or the studio or whatever, and maybe doing a little bit more on it or answering the question you asked and having that whole interactive process. By the way, this mantis does have antennae, but you can't see them. You can just barely see where they're coming out. I looked and looked and looked for a photograph that I could use for this, where I wanted something. Oh, it's 3 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to stop share for a minute. Okay. Now, does everybody have something, the whole mantis down on their page?
All right, first let me do this. So it's easy for us to tell. If you have the mantis and you want to share, raise your hand. That'll be the easiest way.
Yeah, and then Lisa will make you a panelist and you'll be able to hold it up.
Okay. All right, so I have several. Right.
Good. You know, I can't tell you enough. When in a workshop together, you learn as much from your fellow students as you learn from the teacher, almost inevitably. I learned so much from students, I can't tell you. In fact, sometimes they'll take an idea that I've had for years and they'll take it further and I'll think, wow, I mean, that's wonderful. So can we look at some?
I'm trying to get them up and trying to figure out how it works. So now I have several people.
Oh, look at who's here. Teresa Burris.
Nice. She is our stellar star of the iNaturalist.
Yes, and it was her pond that I got that tadpole out of.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay, Joan, put spotlight on Joan.
Okay, let me.
She's holding something up and it's too small.
Okay, Joan, let me see if I can do that. Spotlight video, Joan.
Okay, hold it lower. A little lower.
A little bit lower.
Little lower. Lower the drawing book. Yeah, no, there, right, stop.
Nice.
Ooh,
Wow.
very fine. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. See, now, Joan, do you have a lot of drawing experience?
I'm not, let me make sure that she can speak. That's where I'm not sure.
Yeah, she doesn't say she's on mute.
Okay,
Well, let's look at another one.
Figured out
Let's
how
look
to
at
speak.
Teresa's.
okay.
Suzanne knows that I am a photographer. I am
Yeah,
not
she's a photographer.
an artist.
Put it a little bit
The angle
at
it
an angle. It's getting washed out by the light of the laptop screen.
Yeah.
A little bit. Try angle it, and I'll say stop when it registers. All I
Angle
can see
down?
is dark eyes. This is like, okay, angle it up a little bit.
No, that was worse, I think.
That's worse.
Down.
Angle it down, just like tilt it down. Tilt it up. I guess this is not working.
Yeah. It's
I'm starting
sorry.
to see it.
Sorry, Suzanne. I'll show you another time when you're up here.
Well, I can see that you've got a lot down. I mean, now, was that surprising how much you got on the page that fast when you think in terms of that scribbled line? And
Yeah.
we've got Heather here. Heather, do you want to show us something?
okay. Let me get Heather up there.
It's pretty light, so I don't know. Oh, did
Oh, I
that
can
work?
see it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. I think that what I'm starting to see, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor?
Can't see your cursor.
I need to put it on you.
Is that little hump of the where the thorax and the head kind of is a little lower, and see how much we got done. Now we're going to continue this. I think for 15 minutes we'll stop at 1, and that'll give people, right, Lisa?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah. So see, like where you have the I could see it. You know, here I am telling you to keep your line light, and then I'm trying to see it on the laptop. It is kind of, I mean, I got to learn this. But you know, some of yours I can see a little better. So you've got. I'm going to make a darker line than yours are. So you've got that. How's it?
I'm trying to remember what I have.
I don't know. No, it's like this. I don't know. So you've got that. I'm just exaggerating it. You've got that leg like that, right? So you're gonna lightly outline the leg as it overlaps the abdomen, and you're going to shade in around it.
Okay.
No, normally I don't draw like this.
It must be very difficult.
I've got to practice. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit. I'm going to put our mantis back on. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to try that counter change on that, where the leg gets darker and lighter.
Okay.
Now, I didn't mean not to ignore the head and the thorax here. So let's just start to shade in a little bit. Remember this wing that, oh no, that's the other mantis. That was mine. So let's work on shading a little bit, and I'm going to bring the mantis up again. Okay, everybody see it? Okay, and now can you see my cursor?
Yes.
So you're gonna make sure that this is a little bit outlined so that you can shade behind it and make that little bit of that texture. Keep it loose. Don't get too dark. In fact, what looks good in drawing is when you start out dark in a line and get lighter, you know, like you gradate lines. It really helps the drawing breathe on the page. And to make this leg and this leg and this leg a lot lighter, okay? So that the other legs spatially come forward, okay? That if you look at a botanical illustrator, you'll see them doing that all the time. It's in art, aerial perspective was developed. You all can draw now, and I'll just chat. Yeah, I just feel like I want to share a few more things. So you draw, but making things lighter as they go in the distance was actually developed in the Renaissance, and it's called aerial perspective. And of course, when we look at a landscape and you stand on Gwendolyn Ridge and you're looking at the landscape, you see it gets bluer and lighter as it goes into the distance. Well, that's aerial perspective. And I don't know how artists discovered it. Leonardo da Vinci really used it. He called it sfumato. Well, you can do that with little creatures too, even though that leg is not lighter. You want to say that this leg is behind the body. So if you make them the same value, the leg and the wings here that are covering the abdomen, you're going to make that leg look like it's emerging out of the wings. But if you make it lighter, it's behind the wings, and it's a technique to clarify what you're drawing spatially. Okay. So we're going to give you about, well, let's stop in about 5 minutes at 12:55, and then I will make this into a PDF, and you can, I'll even email you this picture, or you can email me something else that you've drawn. And then we'll have a few more questions before we have to leave the meeting. I love these little stripes on Mantis's face. And notice the highlights here. So Teresa's, I could see very dark lines. Now, if you have a kneaded eraser, the kneaded eraser, you know, K-N-E-A-D-E-E-D, because you can knead them. I don't know if you can see me. So you can knead the graphite out of them and create clean parts of it. But if you touch the, if you can curl it up and you can actually use it. There it is. Oh, aha, put it against my shirt. You can make it into a point. And if you wanted to, you could, and you made the eyes just solid dark, you could take your kneaded eraser and you could pull out a little bit of highlight. In fact, that's not like glistening highlight. Highlight, in fact, if you're a painter, you really know this. The way something is highlights shows its texture. If you're doing satin and it's highlighted, or an eyeball and there's a bright highlight in it, it shows you it's glistening. If it's dull like this, it shows you that it's a different kind of surface. So how highlights are describes the creature as well. So how are we doing, Lisa?
Good, good.
Okay.
As far as time or sound, everything seems good on
Everything. Okay. So back to that aerial perspective idea. We're using the legs that are in the back as we're using it as a concept to making those lighter so that they're going back. We're making this part of the leg lighter and then this darker. Okay, and then you can draw some very light antenna on the head if you want to. That's another question I often get, like, you know, what do you do when, you know, do just because you can't see it, do you not do it? You know, there's a point where your drawing tells you what to do. I mean, you begin and you're telling the drawing what to do. I mean, this goes for all art. When you begin, you're the master. You know, you're holding the reins, and then all of a sudden, the drawing is telling you, or the painting is telling you what to do. It's saying, you know, this needs a little bit more texture. This has too much. This is too dark, too light, and or you didn't get, you know, something about the beautiful piece, and you know, it's just telling you, you see it. And I love that part of the painting. It's also the most frustrating in a good way. How do I solve this? And you, in a way, you stop looking at your subject matter. You start looking at the painting or the drawing more.
We have some noise from somebody. I'm not sure who it was. It might have been.
Somebody's got a bird and somebody's got paper or something that they're crunching.
Yeah.
Well, this is different. The other Zoom workshops I've done, I see everybody's head bowed working.
Right.
And so in this time, I'm just imagining you all out there. This is different.
So can you see the three that are there that I can see?
I can't, but let's see. I can now.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have a question? This sometimes the menu bar just all of a sudden comes up.
Okay,
Comes
so
down, comes
T.
down.
Burris, I don't know who T. Burris is, but she just said that Campbell just texted and said there's a family of raccoons on the driveway.
Oh, Teresa's got to go out fast and catch that on her with her camera. A family.
That's what it
Wow.
said. A family of raccoons on the driveway.
How cool.
All right, so it says 12:55. Did you want to do something with them?
Yes.
Real quick?
I guess we're going to have to stop and wind it up. And I mean, that doesn't mean you have to stop. But let's have a final few questions before we disband.
Okay. Does anybody that's still out here have any questions for Suzanne? Yes. Was that a Burris yes or
She's muted.
I'm trying to unmute her. She has herself muted.
Sorry about that. I was just going to say I am going to go out and try to get a picture of the record.
Yes. Time is of the essence.
That's right.
Oh, this has been a pleasure, Teresa.
Okay. Thank you for everything and such great work this week, Teresa. It was nice.
Yeah, thanks. I've had such a good time.
Right. Well, it's not over yet. We got the afternoon and tomorrow.
Exactly.
Oh,
see you
I'm
all.
proud of you. Do we have? There's one question over here. I have a comment. If she has a moment, yes, I do. Pamela. Do you want to unmute or let Pamela Campbell say something?
Let me see if I can find her over here. Pamela Campbell. Okay, allowed to talk. All right. And unmute. Okay. There we go. Pamela?
I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
You are? We
can hear you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say a thank you about kind of understanding that if we have a camera or a sketchbook in front of us, even though it has us interact with nature, it keeps us at a bit of a distance.
Yeah.
I've been listening at early dawn and late and through the night to a Chuck Will's Widow that I would dearly love to.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where do you live?
I live on a coastal island just outside of Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, wow. Oh, how wonderful.
It is wonderful, but it's like I've been wanting to see him or her so desperately.
Yeah.
And as I was listening to you the other night, it was a full moon, and I had picked out this spot on the porch, and I pretty much figured out where he might be sleeping and waking, and as the moon was just kind of pouring down, and I could hear him, but I could not see him. But what was incredible was the intimacy I felt with him.
Yeah.
Because I had no camera, I had no sketchbook. And then what I did is I whistled my own version of his call.
Yeah.
And he whistled back confused. Or he didn't whistle back, he called back confused. So I kept quiet because I didn't want to disturb him. But I just love this. I am not an artist, visual artist by any means, but I've always doodled and sketched in my writing journals.
Uh-huh.
And I am going to, I captured this little baby titmouse on my camera, and I am going to send that to you. I'm going to sketch it out and send it to you and see what you think.
Oh, good. Well, see now, who was talking? I don't see the.
It's Pamela Campbell.
Pamela Campbell. Okay. Pamela, that is interesting. Now that's your narrative. You see, like when I was talking about writing in the sketchbook, and I happen to show you the snake painting page. That is like the narrative of where you were and what you experienced, and then you ended it with a kind of philosophical idea that you wouldn't have felt that if you had something in between, no matter what it was. But I mean, it's a catch-22. If we don't sometimes have that camera, that sketchbook, that pencil, we're writing something, we can also be overwhelmed by other things in our heads. Maybe all of you don't get overwhelmed by all the things you have to do during the day, but I do. So it's a catch-22, and we just have to find that good balance. But I too, I wrote a funny thing the other day, and I had to write I'll make it a shorter story. I don't have to tell you why I wrote it, but I wrote about packing my bag, actually to go up to Teresa Burris's land and draw that. Packing my bag and having it so heavy with my binoculars and all this stuff and my bottle of water and my water for painting and my bird called Gizmo, that I thought, all this stuff, why can't I just go up and walk there, you know? And so there's that push-pull, and I love both. And sometimes I just love walking, but it rarely does that something comes back in my pocket. You know, I find a dead grasshopper, or I find a pod, or you know, some bit of a bone or something like that. So it's just a part of looking and appreciating. So, you know, I didn't touch on that. Collecting things to draw later is also part of it. But I love that story of the Chuck Will's widow, that you heard it, and it was seeking is part of our experience in nature too. That the goal of seeing something, I mean, that to me is as important as knowing everything's name, and the goal of saying, well, you know, I know that Kevin Hammond has seen spring peepers all the time, but I've actually never seen one. I hear them all the time. I never see them. I mean, in my life, to see one would be really super special. You know, so don't discount that. That is important. That's a wonderful thing. There's always people who will have seen something. And I also firmly believe that you are discovering things for the first time for you. Yeah. And that is really, really special. It's not like, oh, well, everybody's seen a blue jay nest or something like that. Well, no, you haven't. So that is really special for you. And if you can just experience it, is fine. But if you can take a picture of it or draw it or write about it, it just kind of solidifies the experience. I saw the menu come down. Do we have another question?
I see just a thank you from Rebecca Curran.
Oh, Rebecca, thank you, Rebecca,
I see
for
that
coming.
you're up there. Did you want to share a drawing?
Oh, probably not at this point. I think everybody's got to sort of get a bathroom break in before they go to the next one.
Yeah. So okay. Lisa, I'm going to stop sharing this.
Okay.
And I'm going to send you the PDF so you can send it out, or okay, put it somewhere where somebody could download it.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to say goodbye. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that something I've said or done has helped you connect in your own particular way, and to the natural world, which is inexhaustible, and maybe next year we'll meet, or maybe in the summer we'll meet.
Yeah, let's go for the
in
summer.
Conorack or at White Top or something, and go out and draw.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, Suzanne, so much for being with us and sharing your expertise. Everybody, her website, www.suzannestryk.com. I got that right, Suzanne?
That's right.
Yep, and go check out some of her art there. You next time you're in the center, come inside the cottage, the main office here, and we have some of her works on display, which are spectacular that I get to see every day. So anyway, thank you all for participating. Thank you very much, Suzanne, for being with us. And I hope the rest of you have a great day. and we'll see you at 2. All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.